That night I couldn't sleep. The glow of my phone burned on my nightstand, the photos etched in my eyelids. Emily cutting into a cake that should have been mine. My mother beaming with the pride she had never shown me. My father clapping Emily on the back as if she were the only child he had. I got up and poured myself a glass of water, but it tasted bitter. I went to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the envelope my grandfather had given me. The seal cracked under my fingers like a bone finally breaking. Inside, I found documents that made my throat tighten, share certificates, ledgers, and a handwritten letter in his neat mechanical script. Sarah, you are the only one who sees the world clearly. The company I built, the one Emily parades around in, is yours. I've left instructions with Thompson Law. The rest of them are blinded by greed, but you endured. You earned. When the time comes, claim what is yours. And remember, their love was always conditional. Mine never was. Tears spilled before I could stop them. He knew. He had seen how they treated me, how invisible I was made to feel. He had left me the one thing no one could erase, proof of my worth, written into the foundations of the empire they cherished. The next morning I went to work as usual. My coworkers surprised me with a cupcake and a candle. They sang awkwardly off key, and for the first time in a long while I felt like someone saw me. But when I blew out that candle, I didn't wish for belonging anymore. I wished for strength. At lunch, I called Thompson Law. The receptionist spoke as if she'd been expecting me. Ms. Mitchell, the file has been waiting. Would you like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Thompson this week? By Friday, I was seated in his office, the leather chair too big for my trembling hands. He spread the documents across the desk and nodded. Your grandfather was very specific. These shares transfer everything to you. Legally, you are the majority owner of Mitchell Pharmaceuticals. The words seemed unreal. Emily had spent years parading around as CEO, flaunting her power, giving interviews about her vision. My parents bragged endlessly about her leadership, but the truth was brutal and simple. She wasn't even the rightful owner. I was. Why me? I whispered. Mr. Thompson's expression softened. Because you were the one who cared. You visited him when he was sick. You understood the work, the mission. He wanted someone responsible, someone who knew the value of sacrifice. Sacrifice. That word gutted me. I thought about Johns Hopkins, the acceptance letter that had once been my dream. I had declined the scholarship so Emily could attend NYU when my parents said they couldn't afford both. Emily's future matters more, they told me. You'll be fine, Sarah. You're practical. Practical, invisible, erased. But now the tables were turning. I left Thompson's office with a folder heavier than lead in my arms. On the subway ride home, I replayed every slight, every forgotten birthday, every time my parents had said, "We're so proud of Emily." The rage didn't burn like wildfire, it smoldered slow and steady, a coal that would never go out. When I got home, I opened Facebook again. Emily had posted another photo album. Grateful for my amazing family, couldn't have done it without you all. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments praising her brilliance. My own name wasn't even tagged. That night, I typed out a simple email to the board of directors, to whom it may concern. As majority shareholder of Mitchell Pharmaceuticals, I am requesting a review of the current leadership. Documentation attached. Documentation. I didn't hit send yet, but the draft sat there pulsing in my inbox like a heartbeat. For once I held the power. And soon they would know what it felt like to be blindsided, just as I had been every year of my life. I didn't sleep the night I drafted the email. I lay on my back and watched the ceiling breathe with the passing headlights counting heartbeats like rosary beads. At dawn, when the city was gray and undecided, I got up, made coffee, I wouldn't drink, and read my grandfather's letter again. His handwriting steadied me. His belief in me felt like a spine I could borrow until my own held. At 8:01 a.m., before my doubt could wake up fully, I hit send. The first response came in under 3 minutes, as if the board had been sitting with their fingers hovering over their keyboards waiting for a crack to appear in Emily's lacquered veneer. By noon, I was summoned to a special session to clarify ownership and discuss governance. Clarify. I smiled at the word like a dare. I printed the share certificates, the transfer instruments, the notarized letters with my grandfather's signature wide and unshakable. I put on the black blazer I had bought for interviews, I never got tied my hair back like a promise and walked into a building I'd entered 100 times as an invisible employee and never as the center of gravity. The boardroom looked the way power always looks. Too much glass, too much silence. A table long enough to keep people from truly touching. Emily stood at the far end, already backlit like a statue in a temple built to worship her. My parents flanked her, my mother's pearls gleaming like small teeth, my father's jaw clenched in the shape of a verdict. I felt the old ache in my chest, the ache of walking into rooms where my worth had been pre-decided. Then I set the folder down and chose for once to decide it myself. Sarah, Emily said, first pitched just loud enough to carry to the gallery of vice presidents, attorneys, and senior managers pretending not to be an audience. This is unnecessary. You could have called me. We're family. The word family made my stomach turn. We are, I said evenly, and that's why I'm here. Because family stops when fraud begins. Our general counsel coughed in that way lawyers do when they sense something explosive and hope to reroute it through paperwork. Perhaps we'll start with documentation. I unfolded the chain of ownership like a map out of drought, the original share allocation, the amendments, the irrevocable transfer signed by my grandfather 2 years before he died, the escrowed letter instructing the board to recognize me upon presentation. I watched eyes flick across dates, gather around signatures, slow over seals, as if they were searching for a place to disbelieve. Denial frothed at the rims of expensive glasses. Emily forced a laugh. Daddy must have been confused in his illness. He told me, I said, and pulled out the last page. The recording transcript. I didn't have to play the video yet. The neat block letters were enough. In the event of dispute, I affirm that Sarah Mitchell is my chosen majority shareholder. She understands our mission. She will not monetize sickness. I looked up as I finished reading and saw something I had never seen on Emily's face, a hairline crack. My mother leaned forward, the perfume of lilac and rage curling through the air. You've always been jealous. You couldn't stand that your sister is the face of the company, so you waited until he died and stole. His face, I said softly, looked a lot like mine when I sat with him at 3 a.m. and charted infusion schedules. Where were you then? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth did the work for me. The chair of the board cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, both this isn't about grief theater, it's about governance. The documents appear robust. He eyed me. But ownership doesn't automatically mean leadership. I knew that line was coming. Emily had probably practiced it on the mirror until it gleamed. I agree, I said. Leadership means stewardship. It means integrity. I slid a thinner file to the center, which is why we also need to discuss the executive expense account. A new silence fell, quieter, heavier. The kind that lands when the air realizes it's about to be set on fire. I felt the room lean before the people did. I opened the file. Corporate cards rerouted through personal vendors. Consulting fees wired to a Shell LLC tied to Emily's condo mortgage. A retreat at a 6-star spa in Bali the exact week our manufacturing line went down and nurses rationed medication on pediatric wards. Emily's laugh died before it fully formed. You're twisting numbers. It's standard. Not every CEO codifies a bonus that scales with cost cuts, then slashes clinical outreach and nurses' grants while charging couture to the company. My voice didn't shake. I had practiced this in the mirror with my own eyes as judge and jury. You cut the donations Granddad promised our scholarship program and called it optimization. My father exploded first, old school thunder looking for a sky to frighten. How dare you bring this in front of strangers? You're making a spectacle of your sister on your petty birthday week. I heard the word birthday like a trigger snapping. You threw her a surprise party on mine, I said, still not loud. You posted it for the world. This is the only room where anything has a chance to be fair. General counsel pivoted to triage. He asked questions to buy time. Board members asked for clarifications they already understood. Someone requested a recess. I refused it. If I left the room, I would carry decades of deference back in with me. We don't need a recess, I said. We need a vote. Recognize the transfer, initiate an independent audit, and appoint an interim CEO while governance is reviewed. A vice chair who had once brushed past me in the elevator like I was air cleared his throat. Who do you propose for interim? My hands were steady. as I took out the final piece my grandfather had tucked away for a day. He predicted too well a letter of recommendation addressed to this very board, dated and notarized endorsing Dr. Rivera, the woman who built our supply chain through a hurricane season and kept pediatric oncology stocked when our competitors failed. A physician operator, mission over optics, the letter read, and I let those words linger like oxygen. Emily's face reorganized itself into the shape of a plea. She had always been good at finding soft tissue in other people and pressing until they went quiet. "Sarah," she said, voice breaking in the precise place that invited rescue, "we can fix this privately. Don't ruin Dad's legacy. Don't humiliate Mom." I thought of the Facebook album captioned "Our Star." I thought of the comments calling me not a real daughter. I thought of whispered "be reasonable" ease that had cost me entire futures. The little girl inside me whose recitals were skipped, whose birthdays were for other people, wrapped her arms around my ribs and asked me to stand. So I did. "Dad's legacy is a company that kept people alive," I said. "Mom's legacy is her own to carry, and your legacy can still be choosing integrity now. Resign, cooperate with the audit, and stop spending other people's courage like money." The board chair looked around the table, calculating reputational wind. The council whispered. The vice chair rubbed his temple. Outside the glass, the city kept moving, as if empires were not rearranging themselves one sentence at a time. At last, the chair spoke. "We'll proceed to recognize the Transfer Commission, an independent audit, and appoint Dr. Rivera as interim CEO pending confirmations." He turned to me. "Ms. Mitchell, as majority owner, your vote." Yes. The word felt like putting my hand on a rail I had built with my own bones. Emily made one last reach for the familiar weapon. "You'll regret this." "I already have," I said, and the past gave way beneath my feet like a bridge finally burned. The secretary called the roll. A gavel fell. The room exhaled, and somewhere inside me a door I had been knocking on for 28 years unlatched. On the sidewalk afterward, the sky had the exact blue of a bruise healing. My phone buzzed with messages, some furious, some stunned, one from Dr. Rivera that simply said, "Thank you for choosing patience." I stood there and let the wind move through me like a rinsing. I wasn't done. There would be fallout, and family dinners would turn into war zones, and skeletons would rattle in hallways we had wallpapered with denial. But for the first time, the ground felt willing to hold me. Fallout came fast like a dam giving way. By evening, my phone was a battlefield. My mother left 12 voicemails, each one angrier than the last. At first, she scolded me for humiliating the family, then pleaded with me to reconsider, and finally cursed me, her voice sharp with the kind of venom only a mother can make cutting. My father sent a single text, "Ungrateful." That word, short and jagged, felt like an old scar torn open. Emily was louder. She flooded social media with posts painting me as a traitor. "Betrayal hurts most when it comes from family," she wrote, attaching a black and white photo of us as children, arms linked at some long-forgotten picnic. Her followers ate it up. Comments poured in sympathy for her, knives for me. But beneath the noise, something else stirred. Whistleblowers came forward. Employees, nurses, analysts, warehouse staff emailed me with stories of projects cut corners, slashed promises, broken under Emily's regime. They thanked me for pushing back. One woman wrote, "My son's medication was delayed 3 months because of the cuts. Knowing someone finally cares means more than you can imagine." For the first time, I felt not just vindication, but purpose. I wasn't just fighting my family anymore, I was fighting for every life that had been trampled under the weight of Emily's ego. The audit began swiftly. It was brutal in its thoroughness. Pages upon pages of falsified expenses, personal indulgences, masked as executive retreats, and a marketing budget that had been drained into sponsorships that curiously aligned with Emily's social calendar. Each revelation was another stone piled onto her throne until it collapsed under its own weight. Meanwhile, family dinners turned into open war. I went once, just once, hoping maybe some shred of reconciliation could be salvaged. But as soon as I walked through the door, my mother's glare told me it was futile. "You've destroyed us," she spat, slamming down her wine glass so hard the stem snapped. "Your sister is in tears every night." I wanted to laugh, but it came out hollow. She wasn't in tears when she spent company funds on private jets, was she? Don't twist things, my father growled. She's accomplished. She's respected. And you've made yourself a spectacle. There it was again. Not praise, not love, spectacle. To them, I was nothing but shame in a suit. I pushed back my chair. You erased me long before I walked into that boardroom. When you threw her a party on my birthday, when you told me Johns Hopkins was too much for someone like me, when you made sure every accomplishment of mine was smaller than her shadow, you destroyed me long ago. I'm just finally refusing to stay destroyed. My father's face went red. My mother's lips tightened into a line sharp enough to cut. Emily in the corner stared down at her manicured nails, too proud or too ashamed to meet my eyes. I left that night and never looked back. But distance didn't mean silence. As interim CEO, Dr. Rivera began restructuring. She brought me in as an advisor, a role that made my parents scoff, but gave me a seat at the table where real change happened. We cut luxury bloat and restored community programs. We rebuilt partnerships that Emily had burned in her arrogance. Slowly, Mitchell Pharmaceuticals began to resemble the vision my grandfather had built, not a monument to ego, but a lifeline for the sick and the desperate. And still the press kept circling. Some headlines painted me as a hero, others cast me as a greedy usurper. I tried to ignore them, but one morning a headline froze me. Golden Child's crown crumbles, Emily Mitchell facing fraud charges. It was official. The audit had been referred to prosecutors. I stared at the screen, the words both vindicating and heavy. Emily wasn't just falling, she was being buried. That night, I dreamt of our childhood bedroom, of the bunk beds where she would whisper secrets to me in the dark, of the nights I covered for her when she snuck out to parties, of the mornings I fixed her hair before school so Mom wouldn't scold her for being messy. My chest ached when I woke. She had hurt me, yes, she had betrayed me. But once long ago, she had been my sister in the truest sense of the word. I sat with that grief, heavy and complicated, as dawn broke. The sun poured into my apartment, gold and merciless. I realized then that revenge, no matter how righteous, carries its own cost. Because even when you win, you bleed. But maybe bleeding was the price of becoming whole again. The day of Emily's indictment arrived like a storm I had been bracing for, and yet when it came, I still felt the jolt of thunder in my chest. Cameras flashed as she walked into the courthouse, her once perfect smile trembling, her parents gripping her arms as though they could hold up the crumbling statue of their golden child. Reporters shouted my name too, but I kept my head down, stepping aside. This was her reckoning, not mine. Inside, I sat quietly in the gallery, my hands clasped so tightly the bones ached. Emily's attorney argued desperation, youthful mistakes, pressure to perform. But the evidence spoke louder than words, dozens of falsified ledgers, personal luxuries funded by programs meant for patients. The jury barely needed an hour. Guilty. As the verdict rang out, I caught her eyes. For the first time, I didn't see arrogance or superiority. I saw fear, and under that maybe even shame. But there was no apology, no recognition of the years she had taken from me, the birthdays she had claimed, the life she had overshadowed. My parents wept, clutching each other, whispering about injustice, about betrayal, but not mine. Never mine. Their grief was reserved only for her. And in that moment, the final thread, tethering me to their approval, snapped. I realized I had spent my whole life auditioning for love that was never going to be mine. After court, Dr. Rivera met me outside. She placed a steady hand on my shoulder. You did what needed to be done. For the patients, for the company, and maybe one day even for yourself. Her words echoed in me. For the first time, I let myself consider that everything I had endured, every dismissal, every erasure, every wound had brought me to this place. Not just to tear Emily down, but to stand on my own. I went home that evening and lit a candle for my grandfather. The flame flickered small but unyielding. I read his letter one last time, the ink now smudged with tears, and whispered, I did it. I finally claimed my place. In the weeks that followed, I chose distance. I blocked my mother's number after one last venomous voicemail. I muted Emily's social media, no longer needing to measure myself against her curated perfection. I built new rituals, Sunday walks in the park, dinners with coworkers who had become friends, quiet mornings where I celebrated my own birthdays without apology. And when the company's new scholarship fund was launched bearing my grandfather's name, not Emily's, I stood at the podium. My voice shook at first, but then steadied as I told a room full of young students that their futures mattered, that their sacrifices would not be invisible. Applause rose like a tide, and for once I didn't shrink. I let it wash over me. The truth is, betrayal never fully heals. The scars remain tender and deep, but scars are not weaknesses, they are proof that you survived. Proof that even when the people who should have loved you most chose someone else, you still chose yourself. And that is the lesson I want you to carry from my story. Family can wound us in ways no one else can, but their cruelty does not define our worth. Sometimes blood ties bind us to pain, but it is courage that sets us free. So if you're listening now and you've ever been erased, overlooked, or replaced, know this. You are not invisible. You are not expendable. And one day when you stand in your truth, the world will finally see you. If my story touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, resilience, and survival. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? I want to hear your story too.